Joseph tells me his doctors have said he only has weeks now to live, said Lady Playford. But then I'm afraid I'm quite baffled, said Gathercole. You wish to make a new will in favour of a man you know won't be around to make use of his inheritance. Nothing is ever known for certain in this world, Michael. But if Scotcher should succumb to his illness within weeks, as you expect him to, what then? Why, in that eventuality, we revert to the original plan. My children, Harry and Claudia, would get half each. I must ask you something, said Gathercole, in whom a painful anxiety had started to grow. Forgive the impertinence, but do you have any reason to believe that you too will die imminently? Me? Lady Playford laughed. I'm as strong as an ox. I expect to chug on for years. Then Scotcher will inherit nothing on your demise, being long dead himself, and the new will you are asking me to arrange will achieve nothing but to create discord between you and your children. On the contrary, said Lady Playford, my new will might cause something wonderful to happen. She said this with relish. Gathercole sighed. I'm afraid to say I'm still baffled. Of course you are, said Lady Playford. I knew you would be. Closed Casket is my second Poirot novel, and in it, Poirot and his sidekick, Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard, are invited to a sort of house party by a famous children's author, Lady Playford, and neither of them knows why they've been invited. They suspect that, something might happen, and they arrive at this house party, and almost the moment they arrive, they find that the head of the household, Lady Playford, has just cut off her children without a penny and made a new will leaving everything to her secretary, who is about to die. So the secretary doesn't want everything to be left to him because, he reasonably points out that he's got no time to spend any of the money. The children are distraught. Poirot and Catchpool do not know what they're doing there. And then Poirot starts to suspect that the reason they've been invited is because Lady Playford expects a murder to happen as a result of her new will, and that maybe Poirot's been invited in order to prevent a murder. Unfortunately, he completely fails to prevent a murder. A murder does happen. I'm not going to say who gets murdered, but somebody surprising gets murdered. And then it's a sort of traditional Christie-style locked room mystery in a way. Or the only people who might have done it are the guests at this house party in the middle of rural Ireland. The idea for Closed Casket, I was so excited when I thought of it because Agatha Christie was famous really for having ideas that could be summarised in 4 words. If you think of Murder on the Orient Express, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, you could say 4 words and somebody who knew nothing about that book would get the concept and say, wow, that's clever. And it's very difficult to find those perfect, simple, 4 words long ideas. And I had one for Closed Casket. Just before I was due to start writing it, I had this amazing idea of a just incredibly simple motive for murder that had never been done before. So straightforward, and yet I was confident nobody would get it. So I was very excited about that, and that was really the sort of first seed of the whole book and where it all came from. I first read all the Poirot novels age 12. That was when I discovered Agatha Christie, and I immediately sort of set out to buy and read everything she'd ever written. Then by the time I was in my mid-20s, I'd sort of forgotten most of the plot, so I reread them. So I already knew Poirot pretty well. I'd also watched all the films and the TV adaptations, so I knew him pretty well by the time I started having to write about him. But I did, as my sort of homework before writing my first Poirot novel, The Monogram Murders, I reread all of the Poirot novels, and for the first time I read them sort of analytically. So instead of just reading for pleasure, I was reading them to sort of see how much there was to know about Poirot that I hadn't noticed before. And when I read them from that point of view, I did notice things about him that had never sort of struck me before. Like, for example, how obsessively matchmaking he is. He's constantly finding random people and instructing them to get married, or, telling them not to be in love with that person, but instead they should be in love with that person who's much nicer. So he's quite a romantic. He likes getting people together, which is something I'd just never noticed when I first read the books and just focused on the mystery strand. When I was first asked to write a Poirot novel, the first decision I made was that I would not try to copy Agatha Christie's style. I don't actually think one writer can or should copy the style of another. So what I set out to do was to write mysteries that were sort of convincingly 1920s-ish and sort of with a golden age feel, but I invented a new narrator. So my narrator for both my Poirot novels is a chap called Edward Catchpool. He's not in any of Christie's novels, obviously, because I invented him, and I thought that was quite a sensible way of dealing with the fact that my writing style and the tone of my books would inevitably be slightly different from Agatha's. So for anybody who said, this isn't exactly like a Christie Poirot novel, obviously that's because it's by me and not Agatha Christie, but also there's that other reason, which is it's not Hastings narrating, it's Catchpool narrating, who is a whole new person. So that seemed to be a sensible way round that. When I was first asked, would I like to write Poirot novels, I'd never in a million years ever thought that I would ever be asked to do it, and it was a huge honour. And people have said to me ever since, wasn't it just incredibly daunting? And actually, it wasn't. I was honoured to be asked, but I wouldn't have agreed to do it if I hadn't seen a way forward. And I don't think I could do it for any other writer. But because Agatha was my first favourite writer, I think I'd just sort of internalised the Agatha Christie blueprint for what the perfect novel should be. And so I thought, I think I can do this. And I was so excited by it. It was such an amazing sort of creative challenge that I probably wasn't I was probably more excited and not as scared as I should have been. And if you're really excited and passionate about something, the chances of it working are 100 times greater. I think the books which are more likely to fail, I'm not talking about commercially, but creatively, are the books which start with the author thinking, I suppose I better write my next book. I've got a deadline of 6 months' time. Heart's not really in it, And I just thought, there's no way I'm not going to be able to do this because I'm so obsessed with Agatha Christie. And it just felt like being handed the best ingredient to make a meal with, Been writing mysteries for ages, but suddenly to be handed Poirot, the king of all mystery ingredients, was just amazing.